Evening, this is Nick with Let's Write Tonight. We're working on the Volition, and without further ado, I'm going to get started. Oh. Check, check, check. It's good to see you, by the way, man. Well, that's obnoxious, isn't it? Check, check, check. I'm gonna have to see this one for myself here. We're going to do a quick test. I have to see this one for myself here. Last test. Checking for sound. Sound test. Last test. Checking for sound. Sound test. Sound test. Sound test. Test, 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 test. Last test. Checking for sound. Sound test. Sound test. Test, 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 test. Yeah, the sound is low, isn't it? I don't know what's with that. Let me see. OBS is good software, but sometimes it goes a little haywire. How's the sound? Can you hear music at all? All right. Doesn't need to be deafening. So what I'm working on is titled The Volition. And this is a story that sort of prompted the whole stream start. It's something I've been working on for a few years now. And the idea of the stream is that if you have your own story, now's the time to break it out and write along. Don't have to share any details, but if you do, or you have ideas you want to bounce off me, or vice versa, that's sort of how this goes, right? Like Bob Ross, a little bit more interactive. And it's just for the next 45 minutes too. It's not all night. So the story, right now, we're working on sort of the hero's journey, right? And this is sort of the hero's journey formatted for this story specifically. And we're working on bridging the ordinary world with the hero's call to adventure, which in this case is a surge of nightmares, which give him what he thinks are premonitions of his future death. And this whole point of the story is, how are you supposed to live your life with this sort of destiny in mind, right? As we all should to some degree, but in his case, he's got more of a hard date, really, or an approximate hard date. And so how does he go through life with that in mind? And so we're working on this bridge between the ordinary world and his call to adventure, trying to make the ordinary world and the information provided in it or about it as relevant as possible. But because it's at the beginning of the story, it has to be gripping, right? Or else you'll lose the reader. So that's been the tricky part of the last two episodes of this is introducing these characters in a not so exciting situation necessarily. So the trick is to take the ordinary and to make it into something that the reader cares to learn about. Because they're not here for the ordinary, right? They're here for the rest of the story. But we gotta establish that baseline of the character's universe, which in this case, he's just a normal high schooler in his last year of high school. So yeah, that's where we're at. And there was actually a few things I wanted to clean up. Sort of the way I have sort of the way I'm telling the story, it's from the third person, but there's instances of the main character's perspective or their internal thoughts that, you know, other characters aren't necessarily privy to. And I present that in the form of an italicized sentence, right? And that's his inner monologue, is what that is. Inner dialogue, I suppose. This was wordy. I remember that. One of the things I say often when writing too is just get what you're supposed to write out. Just get it out and come back and edit later, because editing is inevitable. And you can spend, like I did, 10 years on one chapter. So you don't want to do that, because it'll never be perfect. And what you need to do is just get the story written. And you and all the editors that you submit this to are going to have their piece of it, so. See, this is a dangerous paragraph here, I think. It's dangerous because I'm at risk of losing the reader because they don't know or care who Michelle is. Which is the main character's sister, and I'm not even sure how much more she's going to turn up in the story. But we're establishing that ordinary lifestyle in which he's just a healthy, well-to-do. What's that? Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's... Oh, yeah. Well, now, don't get me wrong, this isn't the first time we've met Michelle. It's, in this case, the second time. But in the case of the story as a whole, right now, just as it's sort of formulated, she's not an integral part of the story necessarily. supporting role, really. I think if anything, she's just gonna be the first to notice there's something wrong with Patrick. I think that's sort of her significance. Yeah. And a lot of the text too, like why is it always a plane crash? Like that's something the reader's going to ask themselves. So the main character asking himself, why is it always a plane crash? I don't know if that's a good way of doing it. I think it's sort of realistic. But at the same time, it kind of takes away from the reader's own analysis of the story as why the plane crash, why not a car crash, right? But like I said, editing later. Right now it's content. Quantity, I should say. We'll come back for quality. Someday I'll learn how to spell too. Let's see. Just had the nightmare. So this is the second time we've seen him sit down to his morning routine, right? His dad makes him breakfast. He laughs at his own jokes. But Patrick's just not having it anymore. I don't think we need to transition directly into the dream. We need to get him through, I think, one more day. I'm trying not to put him through too much class also, because obviously if it doesn't contribute to the story, why would you include it? So this dream sequence here is, if you're watching, for instance, if you're watching a movie and it's cut after cut of the same scenario, just from a different, sort of a Groundhog's Day sort of look, like snippets of like 10-second scenes of the character enduring the same thing over and over again. That's sort of what these are templated after. And each one, he's progressively more aware of the dreams as they occur. So at first it's a dream like any dream. He doesn't really put much weight behind it. He doesn't associate with it, right? It's not like he's lucid dreaming where he's just making stuff up as he goes. But over time, these happen enough times that he starts to pick up on trends and common faces. And eventually he realizes where he's at within the dream and he tries to escape it. And that's what this series of events are. And it's sort of the comic relief where, you know, he starts a fight to get off the plane, but for whatever reason, they can't hold him at the airport, so they drag him onto the plane. The whole threat, I'm not sure if I'm going to go with that. That's pretty spicy, but you know, just one more example of a way he tries to get off the plane. Finally, in situations where he's on the plane, he's trying to fight that. He tries to change seats. Maybe if he sits in a different, like if he insists on sitting in a different location on the plane, maybe that has some effect on his destiny. Only for that situation to turn out where he gets hit in the face by some luggage that falls during the crash, which he wasn't obviously paying attention at that point. So the next chance he had, he's now watching the person who is sitting in that seat, feeling bad for him, wanting to warn him. eventually the main character will mature enough as an individual where he starts actually taking care of these people and trying to make their lives as comfortable and to be as helpful as he possibly can, right? Being a good person, because he knows they're all toast, him included, and but he can't just tell them because he knows that they wouldn't accept it. No one's gonna believe him. And so just as the story progresses, he becomes more and more mature and sort of proactive in taking care of other people in situations where you might not think you needed to in a real world situation. So that's sort of how this character is going to develop over time. But that's going to be much, much later in the story. Part 1 is all about him trying to escape that destiny. Through his lifestyle. But I think what I want to do today here I am editing. Stop it. Stop editing. Yeah, this is definitely the hardest part, I think, of the story. The rest is all meat. It's just the good stuff. I have to be careful here. This is delicate work. All right, we got to get something down before we can move on. And it's only the second time he's had the dream, so he's not quite degenerating yet. Honestly, I think I have less to do than I think I do. Because this is still only chapter 1 and we're 14 pages in. I think I might be able to start this dream sequence sooner. Because I'm really struggling with how to tie in his initial days at school into the sequence, and I think I sort of did that successfully earlier. We're going to do this. Just a little bit later. Again, we'll come back for editing. This is just to get the scene moving. So we've already met Matt also. This first chapter, we're kind of like bop, 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 getting through it. introducing these initial characters and presenting that routine day. Just trying to get him out the door is so difficult. I'm using heavily a lot. What's the significance of the bag? I don't know, except that it's kind of pissing Patrick off. Again, this is self-aware wise, this is rough. But I've got to get this out here because this is the second stream in which I've worked on sort of this scenario here, and I've got to get it out. Not all days there's a lot added. Usually I'm pretty happy with 2 or 3 paragraphs. I'm actually a lot happier with how far we've got here because of how complicated and delicate this chapter really is. When I initially wrote it, there's an actual prelude. So I think that's good because it introduces the reader to just how action-packed this story can be or will be later on, before you get the scene where he's waking up and he's going to school on a normal day. And so I think that's a good strategy for introducing the story to the reader. Moving on, he has a nightmare. He wakes up, has a relatively normal morning, meets his parents, has routines, meets his friend. He and his friend joke. They eventually get to school after, having their personalities sort of fleshed out. You get to know Patrick and his sense of humor, things that he likes, things that he dislikes. He acknowledges the bad dream he had, that it bothered him, but he acknowledges that he isn't really sure what he saw, or doesn't really acknowledge that he remembers anything at all about the dream other than the sort of the main events of it. Let's see. He's kind of a smartass. And then we get into the day. And I have to work on that next time, I think. Watches the plane crash. It kind of bothers him. He has another nightmare, but it's a generic wake-up scene like the second one he has, where it's just him opening his eyes sweating. But it'll be the second dream in a row he's had that's this, nightmare. That's all he knows. He's had 2 nightmares in a row. And then we get into the first instance where the dream is detailed and he's interacting with it in a conscious way. Not really sure it's a dream yet. He's not aware that he's dreaming at this point. Comes out of the dream. Well, no, so the dream goes. So they have the crash. He wakes up. Here we go. The lurching. Lurch. Lurch is a word. Lurching. Lurching. Ugh. Larching. What an painful. Lurching forward in his bed, shivering and panting from the adrenaline. Okay, so yeah, he's in the dream, and then boom, he wakes up. Okay, so now he's aware he's dreaming. It's affecting him in his daily life. That's the third time. That's the third nightmare in a row. He's starting this next day of school. He's now realizing that there's something going on involving dreams. It's not just an irregular event. And then we're going to get into the rapid fire dreams, where he's now actively trying to evade this situation until we finally start getting into the really good stuff of the story, which is how he chooses to go about his life with these dreams, because he's not escaping them by avoiding sleep. It's not how it works. So yeah, do you have your own story you're working on? still a difficult transition because I feel like I need to talk about Patrick's time at class and how he's being affected there as well, but it's just how to do it and still be interesting. That's the trick. I would say we're making good progress though. So we're definitely right in the heart of the call to adventure at this point, where he now realizes it's not or in this case, it's no longer a limited awareness of the problem, it's the increased awareness. So we've done a pretty good job today of working on this portion of Act 1. The refusal of the call and refusing to sleep, in other words, the reluctance to this change. This is the last bit of chapter 1. Right? This is all of this is the prelude in chapter 1. The mentor, the crossing the threshold, or the house fire, which is already written, and his experimenting with his mentor's sort of observation / guidance. That's chapter 2 until his graduation from high school. So chapter 2 is right here. Eventually, the character, when he graduates, with this philosophy in mind and his wholehearted belief that these dreams are a sign of what's to come and not just a dream, he's going to join the military. He's going to go to basic training. He's going to deploy to Korea. And then we're going to start to get into the alternate universe kind of stuff. That's what we have to look forward to. Okay. So yeah, that's what we're going to be working on later. I'm pretty excited, actually. It looks like by the end of next week, we might actually finish this chunk of Act 1, these 3. Which is great, because this has been 4 weeks, 4 episodes trying to get through this piece right here. But that's all I got for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I'll catch you later, Thogly.